Great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee, and thou changest not. Thy compassions fail not, as thou hast been, thou forever will be. And great is thy faithfulness. Great. All right. Well.
Wow, that ended abruptly, but it was a joy. So yeah, we'll just let the audience figure out what just happened. The Dustin, one and only Dustin Garrett, was just singing "Great Is Thy Faithfulness" to the tune of "Holy, Holy, Holy." Two songs that are still in it as we are down to the Elite Eight matchups. 4 matchups going on with 8 different hymns, looking to close out the tournament this week. And this is probably the most interesting round so far. We've got all the 1 seeds battling out with 3 2 seeds and 1 3 seed that is hung in there. And we're going to break this down one by one. I'm throwing it over to you, Mr. Stephen Duncan, who's joined us again as we look at the Amazing Grace versus It Is Well matchup, a 1 and 2 matchup that we could have all predicted. I think we all did predict this was going to happen. These two are going to run into each other. And right now we have It Is Well with a slight lead, I believe, as of the last time I checked. So, Stephen, what do you got over there?
89 to 85 is the current totals, just so we have that.
Yeah, there's only a 4-point spread there, which is so crazy tight. It really could go either way at this point. And Jeremy, you're absolutely right. I think each of us really expected both of these to bump up against each other once we got to this point. I remember, I think we all kind of called that in round 1 and thought this might be one of the most interesting matchups we would see. And I think that's absolutely true. And just based by the numbers here, it's absolutely a tight race. I mean, a few things to look at. Both of these are just classic, well-loved hymns. They both have several modern renditions. I think there are 2 songs that are being sort of done and redone fairly regularly. So even with modern audiences, they haven't gone anywhere. They're continually being redone. I think both of them are very well known in churches across multiple denominations and well loved across denominations, whether in a traditional sense or in any of their modern versions. So regardless of who's voting, they know these songs, they love these songs. So you do not have the same types of dynamics that we've had before going into some of these matchups. I was also thinking going into this, both of these are fairly common funeral songs as well. I was thinking of that with It As Well. A friend of mine a few years ago passed away, and It As Well was played at his funeral. But then as I got to thinking about it, Amazing Grace, I've heard that at a couple of funerals as well. And that definitely forms a really strong emotional attachment, even outside of the spiritual. So I feel like some people might be voting with their hearts there.
Yeah, but both songs have a soul-soothing element.
They do, which I think is why they are played in that context fairly frequently as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see what this comes down to, because they're really completely evenly matched in every way, I think. One thing that I know Dustin might point out with these is the format of Amazing Grace is different than It As Well, where you have a chorus in It As Well that you can always kind of come back to and latch on to, whereas Amazing Grace, you know, people know the first verse, might know the second, few more might know the fourth. If you go beyond that, you're fumbling for words a little bit. So if you were to play all these straight through, I think my temptation would be to say that people would know It As Well, all those verses a little bit better than they would all the verses of Amazing Grace, just because there are so many in Amazing Grace, and which ones are actually used changes up a lot. So I would give a slight edge to It As Well, as I think overall it is actually the more well-known within churches, even though Amazing Grace has a broader secular reach. I think that might give it the slight edge, and we are seeing that 4-point lead right now. So we'll see if it can carry that all the way through to a win, but that would be my pick here. I think it as well may have a really good shot at closing it out.
All right. Thank you for that, Stephen. Our second matchup to analyze today is Great is Thy Faithfulness, the number 1 seed, up against Be Thou My Vision. Currently, Be Thou My Vision has a fairly comfortable lead at the moment, 101 to 72. Dustin, what analysis can you provide for this matchup?
Wow, Ken, I tell you, that's kind of shocking to me. Great is Thy Faithfulness is such a beloved hymn. And I was doing a little research, and it appears actually Great is Thy Faithfulness came on the scene somewhere 1860s or so, and then actually was composed by a guy from Kansas, which is interesting to know. But what a great song, actually taken from Lamentations chapter 3, that just wedged right in there. There's this great promise and great truth. And so Great is Thy Faithfulness, no matter what, is going to just be a juggernaut throughout history. I think Thomas Chisholm is the guy who wrote this. And man, what a legacy to just have this song. I one time wrote a paper about which do you think God is more pleased with, the sound of Great is Thy Faithfulness coming off the lips of a missionary who's just returned, let's say home, or the Mormon Tabernacle Choir singing it with 8 million part harmony or whatnot? It's one of those songs that when it's it's just really big, but also when it's sung from the heart, the idea of God, your faithfulness is so great. And people have actually seen that, and it's touched them to the depths of their soul, and they want to respond within the midst of all this mess. You are faithful. What a great message.
So you're saying that the audience, by and large, hasn't experienced anything like that, huh?
The audience here, no, they should have. But here's the thing. Now let's talk about Be Thou My Vision. We're talking about a song from the 6th century. We're talking about lyrics that from 6th, 8th century. We're talking about 600, somewhere back in there, where the 600s. My Lanta, what an amazing thing. But now what's interesting about Be Thou My Vision is that the tune is actually an Irish folk tune, which if you're Irish like me, if you see this blonde coming through on my chin, you don't, man. Hey, just because you got a great beard doesn't mean you can make fun of everybody else. No, but no, listen, it does actually. Yeah, you're right. you when you're shaving it in the morning, you sing "Great is Thy Faithfulness" as you realize how thick your beard is. But anyway, this Irish folk tune is just a sweet melody. It really is. Though I think that some of the lyrics in Be Thou My Vision are a little bit more obscure, and rightfully so if it's coming from 600 AD. So my prediction on this is Great is Thy Faithfulness will actually come back. But that's that. I think God's faithfulness. Just when you think everything's about to go down, Great is Thy Faithfulness is going to rise back through. But we'll see.
Sounds like Dustin has a Great is Thy Faithfulness Facebook group that he's going to share this to later today, because I think that's the only way it's going to come back. Now, as we look down at the bottom left quadrant of the bracket here, Stephen, we're looking at the Holy, Holy, Holy versus Come Thou Fount matchup. To my chagrin, Holy, Holy, Holy is losing by 21 at the moment. Interestingly, John Newton, who wrote Amazing Grace that you covered for us a minute ago, he said of the author of Come Thou Fount that he didn't think he was a Christian at the end of his life. Now that is something that I've always known, or at least I've known for a long time, and that's always clouded my view of that hymn. I'm a huge fan of Holy, 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 but Come Thou Fount is just not really my jam. So what kind of insights do you have for us as we look into this battle?
Yeah, let me just go in that direction for a second, because as we've been talking here, I've kind of just been doing a quick sort of side-by-side analysis just lyrically of the two songs. And as I go through this, I'm starting to think that Come Thou Fount has a little bit more jammed into it, honestly, as far as like truth that you can really latch onto and grab onto.
But
Now,
holy, holy,
what
holy
I'm-
has the Trinity. So let's, I mean,
You
let's
have
just
to
be
give it-
upfront here.
you have to give it props for actually going there and mentioning the Trinity. That was always one of my biggest, excuse me, frustrations as a worship leader, was there were very few songs that even mentioned the Trinity, maybe a handful, if that are actually about the Trinity or have a good Trinitarian view within the context of the song. And I always found that frustrating, because something I realized was, if you can actually focus on the Trinity and each member of the Trinity over the course of a worship service, it's an incredible, beautiful, and I think God-honoring thing, instead of just kind of focusing in on one particular person of God. To be able to bring that all into view within a worship service, I think is really awesome. That was something I always tried to do. So if I couldn't find songs that either mentioned the Trinity or brought them all together within a song, I would want something, one song that kind of focused on Jesus, one that focused on the Spirit, one that focused on the Father, and kind of bring all those in view within the context of a single worship service. So you're absolutely right with the actual mentioning of the Trinity. Kind of cool that the song is built on the lyric "Holy, Holy, Holy," and it also mentions the Trinity. So it, even in the use of the word holy, it has that three-pronged sort of Trinitarian feel underneath it. So lyrically, it's underscored musically. It's a brilliant song. So I'm not going to take anything away from Holy, Holy, Holy at all. Musically, lyrically, incredible. Come Thou Fount, though, just as I'm looking through this, even simple things like "Tune my heart to sing thy grace," kind of finding that alignment with God. Things like, we've talked before about that just super powerful last verse of "Oh to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, take and seal it." I think any Christian that's honest with themselves about the state of themselves has really felt that last verse of "Come Thou Fount" in a big way. And just as I go through the lyrics here, I think there's as much, maybe a slight edge more, that you can really latch onto, even from sort of a doctrinal theological perspective, but it's more from a personal experiential type perspective. Holy, Holy is a lot more declarative. It's saying things that are absolutely true about God, that give us these sort of big thoughts of God, and that's massively important. But as far as a tight race like this, me, I like to favor the personal experience, the emotionally resonant, and I think "Come Thou Fount" definitely hits that. The pastor to lay people spread that I looked at last episode, pastors are giving a slight nod to "Holy, Holy, Holy," no surprise there. Whereas the rest of everyone else is kind of coming in strong for "Come Thou Fount." I think it could absolutely still turn the other way and get really close again. But I do think "Come Thou Fount" ends up taking this. And just one last thing, musically, "Holy, Holy, Holy" is a very grand, sort of big sounding melody, kind of in the same vein as "A Mighty Fortress." It's got that same kind of vibe, that same kind of feel to it. "Come Thou Fount" is a very sweet, soft, intimate, personal type of song, just from a purely musical standpoint. And a lot of people love that kind of thing. It's that without being too slow and dragging. So musically, lyrically, I think the edge goes to "Come Thou Fount" on this one, although "Holy, Holy, Holy" is a very, very strong contender.
All right. Well, we have.
Thank you for raising your Ebenezer on that one there.
Yes.
Stephen, appreciate that.
I try to every day.
That's the one struggle with that song.
Yeah, but it ends with that verse 3. So everyone's like, they forgive the Ebenezer line.
And there's
But,
many
yeah, I would.
I was just gonna say there's many churches that use the alternate lyrics for that verse to kind of get around having to explain what in the world an Ebenezer is.
Man, what I wouldn't give to just be in the writer's room whenever they compose that song, and they're like, all right, we got it. They're like, well, the Ebenezer line, you sure you want to keep that in? Yeah. I was just reading about that this morning.
There is no way this doesn't age well.
And then Charles Dickens came along, and Scrooge McDuck ruined it.
Man. Okay. Sorry, I had to chime in there.
That's for the last matchup yet to discuss is, it was mentioned, the song was mentioned just a minute ago by Stephen, A Mighty Fortress squaring off against How Great Thou Art. This is number 3 seed, A Mighty Fortress, going against the number 1 seed, How Great Thou Art. And right now there is a 103 to 74 edge towards How Great Thou Art. Dustin, what do you got for us on this one?
Well, yeah, Ken, that's not too surprising to me, especially since in Christianity Today magazine 2001, How Great Thou Art was actually number 2 behind Amazing Grace as far as ranked favorite hymns of all time survey. I don't have all the details of who they surveyed and whatnot, but How Great Thou Art, written in 1885 by a Swedish guy. So we got a Swedish hymn, which is pretty sweet. And his name was Carl Boberg.
How did a European sneak in there? My goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Well, and here's with another. So it's going up against the German juggernaut of Mighty Fortress, which was obviously penned in 1529. And so not only penned, but wrote the words and composed the melody. Martin Luther did, which you got to give him props that that he did that, because a lot of these songs, they were penned and then the melody was added later, or somebody else added the melody, which just an encouragement to the songwriters out there. A lot of times that's the case. There's people who have gifting in writing, but they might not have gifting in arranging or adding melodies, and vice versa. There's people who can arrange music and add melodies to song, and they're not really particularly gifted writers. So if you find somebody who's writing, or find somebody who can make melodies, team up with them and create some good songs. Very, very few people can write, arrange, and perform all in one. So side note there. But I do agree with what was said, I think a few times ago when we were on here broadcasting, that unless the Lutheran crowd really shows up big and strong, a Mighty Fortress might actually come down brick by brick from the greatness of How Great Thou Art, just soaring over top of it, just like a sledgehammer into the bulwark that is a Mighty Fortress. So yes. I mean, just imagine that, just a moat in front of this Mighty Fortress, and How Great Thou Art just charging through with one of those giant ramrods. That's going to be my prediction here, that How Great Thou Art, in its all of its Swedish glory, will just soar right through the top. And it might be a similar thing back in 2001, which is interesting. I mean, if Amazing Grace goes up against How Great Thou Art, and we're talking about 20 years has gone by, you think it just, lastly, one of the great things about this tournament is that in regards to history and songs, how long we've been alive, it's but a blip in the stream that is the goodness of songs written over millennia we're talking about here. But you never know what song is going to carry on and go, hey, this song is going to be actually used by God's people 100, 200, 300 years from now. It's just wild to think. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that.
And one thing I just really love about How Great Thou Art is, of course, the chorus. Then sings my soul. Everyone wants to belt it out when you get to the chorus, but the song walks you through. I mean, you're talking about thunder and birds and the trees and the looking lofty mountains,
forest glades.
Yeah, forest glades. That sounds like an air freshener, and you're just like, here you're going
Ansel
through
Adams
nature.
painting.
you're going through nature, and then when I think that God, his son, not sparing, and then you're focused on the cross, and then you're talking about the second coming. It is very much a comprehensive song.
It is. It really spans the breadth of, I mean, it just crescendos idea-wise. You're right. And one of the things that the song does is it beautifully uses this A7 chord. So then sings my soul, that part right there, yeah, it's saying and what you're doing, and when everybody in one room is saying and doing the same thing, it reflects a unity that we're supposed to have as Christians, as the body of Christ, and it also promotes that unity as well. So when everyone is singing from their soul, about singing from their soul, and looking around and seeing everybody doing that, it's quite the powerful song.
Well, one thing
Yeah,
that we
that's
can
good
be
stuff.
one thing that we can be sure of here is that we have in our Elite Eight, no question, these are the 8 greatest hits of all time for hymns, right? It had to come
The
down
8
to
greatest.
the 8 greatest. So
Yep.
these are
Wow.
now I do have to ask. Now, you guys made your predictions at the beginning, real quick. Are you sticking with your original predictions? Dustin, you had it as well. You sticking with that?
Oof, man, right now, I mean, I feel like it would just be a real shocker if it made it through. I want to root for it to go through. And maybe that's just because I would love to see in my lifetime, and I would love to see Christianity Today be wrong about Amazing Grace. So, but I would love to see it as well come through. But there's part of me that still nags that Amazing Grace. People are so familiar with it, it's hard for them to let that go. But I have maybe I'll have to let go the Great Is Thy Faithfulness versus Be Not My Vision. That would be wild to let that go. But either way, I feel like one of these songs is going to make it into the service where I lead on Sunday. It's got to be.
Now I have to say,
if not all of them.
I got my my bracket here, and I did predict "Be Thou My Vision" over "Great Is
Wow.
Thy Faithfulness."
Did you?
I've got 7 of the final 8 here, but I have "Holy, Holy, Holy" winning it all, and I'm not feeling too good about that anymore.
Steven, well, your
Yeah.
original pick, I think, was also it as well. You feel comfortable with that, or are you making a shift here?
Yeah, I still feel comfortable with it. Like I said, I still predict it to barely topple Amazing Grace. I think that can happen. I think if Holy, Holy, Holy were to make a comeback, I think it as well would trounce it. It is well come thou fount. I could see that being a close matchup, but I could also see it really going towards it as well.
And I'll point out, Ken, you also had 7 of the final 8 predicted accurately, but the one both you and I missed was "Come Thou Fount." We didn't give it the credit it deserved, apparently, and it might be a surprise. It might take it all. I don't know.
Yeah.
People love that song. They really do. And all these songs were written more than 100 years ago, which is another interesting aspect as well.
Yeah.
Well,
I have originally selected "How Great Thou Art" as the winner of this whole thing, and I'm sticking with that pick. I'm gonna say that's gonna ride it out. So
you could be right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both, Steven and Dustin, for joining us once again today. For those who are viewing this, again, we encourage you to go to facebook.com/dotheology and vote for your favorite hymns. Jeremy, you got one more thing to say?
Yeah, I feel bad. I'm assuming this is how you pronounce his name, Lukachi. He's been one of our faithful listeners from the beginning. He's the reason why we have the chart in Romanian on our website. I feel bad that I kind of made a dig at Europeans there. So, Lukachi, I know you're listening to this. Sorry, brother. I love you.
Praise thy faithfulness. Let's end with that.
Very good.